He thought he could steal my land in broad daylight, so I made him pay for every single inch. I woke up to the sound of destruction, and by the time it was over, my neighbor had turned my hillside into his personal driveway. No permission, no warning, just machines tearing through everything I had built over years. But what he didn't know, I wasn't going to let it slide. And by the end of this, he wouldn't just lose the driveway, he'd be forced to rebuild everything he destroyed, at his own expense. I woke up to the sound of machines tearing through my land, loud, aggressive, and completely out of place in the quiet morning I was used to. At first, I tried to ignore it, thinking it was construction happening somewhere down the road. But the noise didn't fade. It grew louder, heavier, like it was getting closer with every passing second. A strange feeling settled in my chest. Still half asleep, I threw on a jacket and stepped outside, and that's when everything hit me at once. The ground trembled beneath my feet. Right there in front of my eyes, a massive excavator was clawing into my hillside. My hillside! For a moment, I just stood there, frozen. Chunks of earth were being ripped apart like it was nothing. Soil I had spent years nurturing was being tossed aside. Trees I had planted with my own hands, trees that had taken years to grow, were now lying on their sides, their roots exposed, torn violently from the ground. It felt like watching something personal being destroyed, piece by piece. My peaceful slope, the place I took pride in, the place that made my home feel complete, was being erased in minutes. Suddenly, the shock turned to anger. I ran downhill, my heart pounding, shouting as loud as I could. "Stop! Hey, stop!" I waved my arms frantically, trying to get anyone's attention. After a few long seconds, the machine slowed, then finally stopped. The operator peeked out, confused. Then a man in a crisp shirt walked toward me, calm and composed, as if nothing unusual was happening. "Can I help you?" he asked, almost casually. I stared at him, struggling to process his tone. "That's my land," I said, pointing behind him at the destruction. He barely reacted. Instead, he glanced back and said, "We're building a driveway." A driveway? Through my property. And in that moment, as I looked at the damage already done, I realized this wasn't some harmless misunderstanding. This was deliberate, and it was only the beginning. The man introduced himself as my new neighbor, speaking with the kind of confidence that made it clear he was used to getting his way. He gestured casually toward the hill behind my property, explaining that he had recently purchased the land up there. According to him, building a driveway straight through my hillside was simply the most practical option. Practical for him, maybe, but for me, it was destruction. No permission, no discussion, not even the basic courtesy of a warning, just bulldoze and build, as if my land was nothing more than empty space waiting to be used. "You must have misunderstood the boundary," he said, tilting his head slightly, almost like he was talking to someone who didn't know better. His tone wasn't aggressive, it was worse. It was dismissive. As if I didn't belong there, as if I hadn't spent over 10 years living on that land, caring for it, shaping it, understanding every inch of it better than anyone else ever could. I felt my jaw tighten. "I didn't misunderstand anything," I replied, my voice steady but firm. "I know exactly where my property begins and ends." And I did. I had walked those lines countless times over the years. I had cleared brush, planted trees, and even hired professionals to survey the land when I first bought it. The boundaries weren't a guess. They were documented, measured, and real. I pointed directly at the torn-up hillside behind him. "This is my land," I said, making sure every word landed. "You need to stop, right now." For a brief second, I thought maybe, just maybe, he would reconsider, that he would see the seriousness of the situation. But instead, he smiled. Not an apologetic smile, not a nervous one, a confident, almost smug smile. "We've already started," he said, shrugging slightly, like the damage already done somehow justified continuing. "And besides, this will increase property value for both of us." I stared at him, trying to process what I had just heard. Increase property value? That was his justification? Destroying someone else's land without permission because he believed it might somehow benefit them? That was the moment everything became crystal clear. I wasn't dealing with someone who made a mistake. I was dealing with someone who believed rules didn't apply to him. Someone who thought confidence, money, and a smooth explanation could override basic respect and even the law. Arguing with someone like that wouldn't solve anything. So I didn't argue. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Without breaking eye contact, I started taking pictures. The excavator, the torn-up earth, the uprooted trees, every detail, every angle, documented. His smile faded slightly as he watched me. Then I lowered my phone and looked him straight in the eye. "You're going to regret this," I said, calmly. There was no anger in my voice this time, just certainty. For a second he paused, and then he laughed. A short, dismissive laugh like I had just told a joke. He turned away, signaling the operator to continue, completely unfazed. But as I stood there watching the machine start up again, I knew something he didn't. This wasn't over. In fact, for him, it had just begun. That same day, I turned my frustration into action. I went straight inside, still shaken but now completely focused. If he thought I was just going to stand there and watch my land get destroyed, he was about to learn how wrong he was. I pulled out a box I hadn't opened in years, one filled with every document related to my property. Old surveys, purchase papers, land records, even photographs from the day I first bought the place. I spread everything out across the table, going through each page carefully. And there it was, clear as day. Every document, every map, every line confirmed the same thing. The hillside was mine, completely mine. But I knew something important. Knowing the truth wasn't enough. I had to prove it in a way that couldn't be ignored. So I picked up my phone and called a professional surveyor. I didn't wait, didn't hesitate. I told him it was urgent. Thankfully, he understood the situation and agreed to come out immediately. Those next 48 hours felt long. Meanwhile, the noise outside didn't stop. The machines kept running. The damage kept growing. Every time I looked out the window, it felt like a piece of my patience was being tested. But I stayed calm, because I knew something he didn't. I was building a case. When the surveyor finally arrived, I walked the land with him, showing him exactly where the damage had been done. He took his measurements carefully, marking points, double-checking lines. It was precise, methodical work. And when he finished, there was no doubt left. The updated, legally certified survey confirmed everything. The excavation wasn't just close to my boundary, it was deep inside it. That's when I took the next step. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in property disputes. From the moment I sat down in his office and showed him the pictures, the torn earth, the destroyed trees, the active construction, his expression changed. Then I handed him the survey. He reviewed everything carefully, then leaned back slightly and said, "This is a clear case of trespassing and property damage." He paused for a moment, then added, almost impressed, "And honestly, it's pretty bold." Bold or not, it was illegal. We didn't waste any time. The paperwork was prepared, the evidence organized, and a formal complaint was filed. Not just to stop what was happening, but to make sure he was held responsible for every inch of damage he caused. Every tree, every layer of soil, every scar on that hillside. And while all of this was happening behind the scenes, the neighbor kept going. Day after day, the machines continued. The driveway started to take shape, cutting right through my land like it belonged there. He didn't come back to talk. He didn't try to fix anything. He acted like nothing was wrong. Maybe he thought I was bluffing.
Or maybe he believed that nothing would actually happen, that people like him didn't face consequences. But as I stood there one evening watching the work continue, I couldn't help but shake my head slightly. Because what he didn't realize was simple. Everything was already in motion, and soon enough, it was all going to catch up to him. That was his second mistake. A week later, everything changed, and it changed fast. The sound of construction that once felt unstoppable suddenly went silent. No roaring engines, no tearing metal, just quiet. The legal notices had been delivered, work orders were halted immediately, and just like that, the project he had pushed forward with so much confidence came to a complete stop. It was almost surreal how quickly things shifted once the law stepped in.